Welcome to this week's episode of the Compliance Digest, presenting topics on all things compliance related. My name is Alex Krenke, and joining me this week is MacKenzie Nold, the Account Executive Manager here at Quest CE. So MacKenzie, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
This week, we want to talk about some helpful tips as we move into the fourth quarter of the year, some things that you want to keep in mind as things start to get busy and you start running out of time. These will be some helpful tips to keep in mind to make sure you don't miss anything. So, MacKenzie, tip number one.
Thank you. So the first tip for today that I wanted to share with our compliance audience has to do with receiving copies of your training content from the 2013 training program. So if you're working with a vendor for your training, then I recommend that you get in touch with them, with your account executive or relationship manager, and request PDFs of any content that you delivered to your employees or reps throughout the training year. Mm-hmm. So that could be material from any courses, or it could be questions that were within any custom questionnaires, and copies of any reports, just so that you can have everything for your records in case you happen to be audited in the future. Mm-hmm. We do have some clients that are really on the ball with this, and they do it right away in the program year. So right when they launch their training, they will immediately say, I'm going to sign these courses, and I also need copies of them for my records. But for those of you that haven't done that, it's not too late. Just reach out to your contact and just make sure that you ask for copies of any material that was presented within the 2013 program so that you can compile them and save them for any future audit needs.
Yeah, and it's a great time to do that now because as you move later into the year, you got to think that more and more broker-dealers are doing the same thing. They're requesting copies of their content. Eventually, you're going to inundate that vendor with all these requests, and you may not get them in time. So you're going to want to make sure that you get those requests in early so that your vendor or however you have to get those records, that you get them in a timely fashion.
Another thing I would recommend is just making sure that you're familiar with the reporting access that your vendor offers to you. So you might not be familiar with the fact that your vendor may have 24/7 access available to you, so you can log in and you can run reports on the fly if you need to in the future. So make sure that you know how to navigate that. If you have any questions, I'm sure they can walk you through it. And then another thing that we've had some clients do in the past has been printing out actual hard copies so they can compile their own audit binder. That's a nice way if you just want to be able to have the backup in a hard copy format. You can print your reports, the copies of the content that your vendor gave to you. You can put it into a nice organized binder, put it on the shelf, and really wrap up 2013 so that you can start 14 with a clean slate. And if you happen to be audited, you can just pull that binder off the shelf and you're ready to go for any FINRA purposes.
Mm-hmm. It makes it really easy. I know the next thing you wanted to talk about was a popular trend that we've been seeing. We've been seeing like a little bit about it in previous years, but it's really gaining some traction within the last month or so.
Exactly. So tip number 2 has to do with a trend that I've heard from my clients and my team over the past month or two. And what that is a shift towards custom requests for electronic policy attestations. So this is not just regarding your standard U4 attestation, but more so internal policies that involve registered reps, but also just employees that aren't registered as well. So this could be any type of update to maybe your employee handbook. If you require your reps or your employees to do harassment training, any type of HR training or updates that you just need everyone to at least review, and you need a record that they did see it and that they attest to that material, you can often put that or host it on your vendor's training site. Mm-hmm. The really nice thing about that is that then everything's in one location. So you can run all your reports for everyone, and you can see not just the firm element or the insurance CE, but you can also see another AML and now these internal attestations as well. So you have the reporting all in one location. And from the user standpoint, it's really easy because they're familiar with logging into one familiar site.
Yeah, and what we find is this makes it really easy to track the life cycle of the rep. So you know that they're compliant with your internal policies, with your HR policies, and then with FINRA's policies. So you really can tell at a glance, making sure that the rep is following all the procedures that they need to be.
Exactly. And that was actually good to mention HR. I mean, this could even go outside of the rep. It could just be for general employees as well that aren't registered. If you need them to take any type of training, you have the ability to add that onto your training platform quite easily.
Mm-hmm. So the last thing we wanted to talk about was something that's really important when considering what your plan is for next year, or even looking a little bit more longer term, 2015.
Exactly. So the last thing today, number 3, would be a best practices reminder. So this has to do with the budget approval process. I'm sure everyone is very familiar with what it takes to get things approved far in advance so that you can actually maybe make some changes or enhancements to the procedures that your team carries out now. But this is really the time to do it. I know we kind of talk about doing things early and staying ahead of the game quite often on our Compliance Digest videos, but this is the time you should start thinking about what types of procedures do you want to change in 2014 and even farther on in 15 and 16. So this isn't just from element training, but it could be any changes that you're thinking of making down the line to perhaps your branch audit procedures, any changes to your current rep registration processes, anything that is going to take some significant time and research to kind of make a change so that you can really streamline things in the future. If you're looking to consider a vendor for any of these things, then you really need to be ahead of the game because even if you're starting to do the due diligence process, you're looking at neat things, none of it's going to happen if you don't have budget approval. So this is the time to really get ahead of the game, make sure you're looking at the vendors, seeing what's out there, just so you can compare them to what you're doing now and consider streamlining some things for efficiencies. Then get ahead of your team so that you can submit requests for any budget approval so that you can make these things happen. And that's not even just for, beginning of 2014, but for larger firms, you might be thinking down the road of 2015 and 16. If you want to make some significant changes to your team's procedures, you really need to think far down.
Yeah, it's really, now is a great time to start working that process. So talk to your vendors, find out what they offer that you aren't utilizing, because you know that eventually you'll have to sit down with your team and schedule a demonstration. That'll lead to an RFP if you like the product, and then it's budget approval. So if it's not in your budget, you're going to have to wait another year. So it's really best to start thinking about that now. So we do want to wrap up and just do a recap of the 3 tips. Tip number 1, make sure you have all your records as you move into the last part of the year.
Yep. So make sure you have hard copies or PDF copies of all your content and decide how you want to store that. See if your vendor can help and see if you want to compile your own type of internal audit binder if that fits your needs.
Tip number 2 is a popular trend that we've been seeing. It's digital attestations.
Exactly. So just shifting any type of internal policies to an online format, just any type of employee guidelines or policies that you need someone to review and attest to.
And then the last tip was looking into budget approval for next year, and then even further down the road.
Exactly. So start early, think ahead, and try to get that approved so you can make some changes down the road.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this information. I know the end of the year can be crazy and hectic for a lot of people, even outside of work. So these are just really helpful things to keep in mind as you move in and make sure that you don't miss anything. So again, thank you, MacKenzie, for joining us.
Thanks.
And we'll see you again in another couple weeks for another exciting episode of the Compliance Digest.